Hi, I'm Nicholas O'Connor with Buddha Bugs, and I'm going to show you guys how we pack a tarantula. Typically, you're going to want this paper towel to be moist, but it's going to be unpacked after this video, so it doesn't really matter. But usually, I'll take a single sheet. I like the ones that are like this because it works real good for vials this size. I'll moist it, underneath the water faucet, squeeze all the water out so it's still moist but not actually damp. And so you'll pack it down here at the bottom, give it like a little plate at the bottom. Usually works better when it's moist. Usually, like I said, these ones that have got like split sheets, they work really good for like the 3, 7, and 12 dram. I think this is probably 12 dram vials. It works like the length works really well, So usually like I'll cut it a little bit so it's like just shy of the top, so you can put a little top on it too, but I don't have any scissors, but you get the idea. And usually, like I'll use Sharpies. There's a bunch of different like household items that I'll use depending on the size of the spider that I'll use to wrap the paper towel with. Get a nice clean like circular little tunnel for them to run into. Because it's real easy to transfer them. Typically, because they usually just want to run right into the hole when you push them down into it, and so it works out really well. But basically, it's to cushion it, so it's not smacking around. So usually, like you want the opening, the little tunnel that they're going into, to be big enough to where they can fit, obviously, but tight enough to where they're not smacking around the walls. Especially because if it's on the little bit more plump side, if it's smacking around inside of the tube, there's a potential for it to cause injury to the abdomen and to burst and to injure the animal. And so usually you want it to be packed to where they fit, and they can move around. It's not super tight. If on the off chance they try and molt, there's enough space in there for them to be able to successfully molt. Ideally, if I've got a spider in pre-molt, I won't send it out. But sometimes, it'll happen and you don't expect it. These paper towels are a lot harder to work with when they're dry. So usually I would like cut this with scissors, and that would probably be way safer. But we'll see if I can't like saw it off with this. So then you got like a real nice hole. Makes it super convenient. And usually you can get them real easy. They'll just run straight into it. Seriously? So, see, got enough room to be in there, but he's not going to smack around. Put a little top on it so they can't sort of squeeze around and get anywhere else. They're not smacking against the top. I mean, mostly the paper towel is really just to act as cushion material. And like I said, it's going to be moist, and so it's going to act as like a sort of wicking water bowl as well too, and help control temps as well. And then typically I'll take like some black electrical tape, and I'll always run it around the top just on the off chance you don't want the top to pop off and then they'll be running around the box or something like that. So it's easy, packing the spider's easy. A lot of the times, especially slings, they're pretty cooperative. Sometimes some of the larger legged animals will fight you to get into the hole, but usually they'll run right in like that. They see it as a burrow. It's basically like a hide for them, and so you just nudge them, they'll run right into it. They love it. And so I'm real particular about the way I pack. I really don't want stuff to be shaking around. I want to make sure the customer gets the animal alive. And so I'll usually, add a little bottom piece into the box. I'll seat the animal in it, and then I'll absolutely slam it full of packing material. Usually it's going to be a lot more than this. I'll usually use paper towels because I like how pliable they are. Lets me, especially when there's multiple animals, I'll arrange them in the bottom and I'll shove different pieces of paper towel in between them so that no one is, moving in any direction at all. And then I'll absolutely pack the box full of packing material. It's unfortunately kind of wasteful and pretty expensive since I use nice paper towels. But and then, once it's, absolutely packed full of packing material, I'll put, whatever the heat pack, phase pack, whatever sort of temperature control device I'm using, I'll put it at the top. Usually for like a single spider setup like this, I would use a 6x6x6. This is a 7x7x7. It works just fine. If I'm using a heat pack, especially for, a setup like this with a single spider, if I was using a heat pack, I'll take like a thicker bodied chopstick and I'll poke a single hole in the top. These boxes, I use the ones from Redline too. These boxes have got a little bit of ventilation on the corners. And so I typically don't put holes in the box and stuff like you would with a reptile. The inverts really, they don't need as much oxygen as the reptiles do. And so I don't normally put holes in the box, but I will if there's a heat pack in it and it is a small box like a 6x6, I will put at least a single hole in the top. You've got airflow coming from the corners of the box, and then you'll get some airflow from the hole in the top. It doesn't need a lot, but the heat pack does need oxygen to do what it's designed to do. And obviously the animal needs oxygen too, but the invertebrates the amount of oxygen that they need to breathe is vastly smaller than a reptile. And so I don't want to over-ventilate it, but I do want to make sure that there's some ventilation going on. And I will typically have ventilation in the vial as well. Some companies ship the vials with ventilation, some don't. I normally will put like 3/8 of an inch holes in the vial just to make sure there's some circulation going there. It's whether or not it's necessary really could be debated, but I like to do it anyways. But it's real straightforward. It's not difficult. Typically, I'm real worried about how I ship as far as temps go, and the use of heat packs and stuff. I try to, especially if I'm using a heat pack, I try to not like overextend. Like I'll put, like in this setup, I probably could have put, 5 or 6 of these vials in here. I normally don't want to stack it more than one high. I try to keep the animal as far away from the heat pack as possible. And that's another reason that I pack it with so much packing material in between the animal and the heat pack. Because all you're really wanting to do is raise the ambient temperature of the box. You don't want them to actually be getting heated. And so I try and leave a large amount of space in between that. So there's no contact with the animal at all. And then obviously if I'm shipping something bigger or more animals, I'll put it in a bigger box. Inverts are a little bit better than the reptiles. I ship a bunch of packages. I never have DOAs. And so, the sort of suggested box size that you'll see a lot with the reptiles it doesn't really hold true with the inverts. But you do want to be mindful of the location of the heat pack and the location of the animals. But you can definitely ship with a heat pack in a smaller box for the inverts and not have any real concerns about DOAs like you would with a reptile. You just have to, keep it in mind. And I personally prefer to use the 72-hour heat packs. They're bigger, but the real reason that I use them is the peak temperature is lower. And so I try to keep stuff like that in mind. The peak temperature, they last longer, if it does get delayed, but I've never had a package delayed more than one day. If it does, it'll usually stay another night in Memphis or Indiana, and I've never had an experience other than that, but it is possible it could last longer. And so it's better to have a heat pack that's gonna last longer if it does get delayed. But then, like I said, the biggest issue for me is that peak temperature is lower on the 72-hour heat pack, and I think that's important, especially when you're shipping in a smaller box. I know most people do use the 40-hour, and it works fine. I'm not knocking the 40-hour at all, and that would still work in the smaller box just as fine. But I do think having that lower peak temperature and they're only slightly more expensive. And so I think it's worth it. Just a little bit more wiggle room on how hot the box may end up getting. And so, yeah, it's easy. it's a lot easier than packing reptiles, I think, because you can get away with a smaller box, and so the shipping price is going to be cheaper. And so I think that's nice. Yeah, so that's how you ship, a tarantula. Thanks for watching. And so, I mean, it's exactly the same way for bigger stuff. The only difference is going to be obviously the vial's bigger, maybe the box needs to be bigger. But I think this is sort of like the industry standard of shipping tarantulas. So, I mean, this is the way to do it. Thanks for watching.
All live packages must meet the Redline Shipping standards, which include temperature guidelines and heat pack use guidelines. Misuse of heat packs is the #1 cause of DOAs in live shipping. Find all the guidelines and Redline Shipping standards on our site, and don't hesitate to contact us with any questions.